All right. Hello and welcome to the Souls and Simulation podcast. We are your hosts, Devin and Angie, and this podcast provides an alternate view on life after death, processing everything that's wrong, and possible solutions on how to get it right in the afterlife.
Welcome, everybody, to the Souls in the Simulation podcast.
Welcome,
I'm
welcome.
Angie, that's Devin, and guess who else we have with us today? Well, we promised you, Ola Wolny. B as in Victor. I just want to make that plain because a lot of people get that wrong. But she has a background in engineering, and then took that into oil and gas, and then decided somewhere along the way to study all of the old texts, and then also uses astrology tools to kind of help people look at their natal chart and find the areas in which they need to work on to get the hell out of the prison. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ola Wolny.
Oh my God, thank you so much. It's absolute pleasure and honor to be with you ladies, exploring these topics, very, very important topics, especially in the current times. So I'm looking forward to diving. Always very, very happy to be invited. And if anybody is interested and wants to listen, I absolutely love to dive into those things. So let's do it.
Sounds good. I thought we would let you wanted to mention you have forgive me if I butcher it, it's Lofoten
Yeah.
getaway, and then you mentioned another one too. So please, and we can also remind everybody at the end of those things as well. But I wanted to make sure we didn't forget those.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for mentioning that. So yes, I am based, as they say, on top of the world, or maybe in the middle, in the Arctic Norway. So the area here, Lofoten, a very, very special place. Amazing energy. I'm sure that everybody been around the world and experienced sites with amazing energy. I have been around a little bit as well, and I must say that Lofoten never ceases to amaze me, and the energy is absolutely off the charts. It is, even when you look at geology, it is the region with the oldest and the youngest rock formations in the world. So a bit of a well, what does that mean, right? What are those youngest rock formations? It's a question. So very much a primordial site on Earth, which acts as a bit of a recalibration and reset from the field onto your code. This is why I bring people here. This is why I organize events, getaways, private and open, for people to experience this energy, because specifically myself, it happened for me here that part of my, I would say a big chunk of my programming, of my matrix layers, and infestation with the parasite has been targeted by the field itself, by the region, and dismantled. So I know that there's it's like that they will literally strike you, and that layer will start creaking, collapsing. That's what happened to me, and that's what I give a chance to everybody. I just happen to apply a little bit more pressure to kind of accelerate the process. So a bit of a playing, the bad cop here. And the second site, as you mentioned, I've just recently came back from Madeira, which was that's an island on the Atlantic, belongs to Portugal, so a little bit more on the European side. Amazing, well, volcanic island, as they say, but when you come and explore, is it truly the volcanoes that we are, the volcanoes that we are dealing with? So that's another story, and that's my new direction. That's my new destination, where I started already taking people, and I will be continuing next year. That site, totally different flavor, more of a activation of literally unbound creation. I don't think I have ever been to a place that have made me feel so free and so unbound in a very much that matrix kind of context, like Madeira. So another site which activates something inside of you. And again, of course, you might argue that there are tourists coming there all the time. So, what's the big deal, or why isn't it happening for everybody? Well, probably to some extent, it is another aspect, that pressure just coming and being exposed may not be enough. There must be a little bit of pressure applied, and by pressure I mean, for example, what back in the day shamanic cultures used to do through their initiations, right? They would create certain conditions for a person to be hit, to be destroyed, right? So shamanic, there was nothing safe in shamanism. Right now the spirituality is very safe. That's the pseudo spirituality, the new age spirituality, but in reality the path to liberation was not a safe path, was not comfortable, was not nice, and it was not necessarily something that you would come back from. So in shamanic traditions, they knew about it, and that's pretty much where my approach comes from. You know, my own process was certainly not comfortable and wasn't safe. It left me ripped me out of the paradigm that I used to be in, and left me bare, left me naked in many ways, with relationships shattered, family situation changed as well. So no, not a safe place, not a walk in the park. But yeah, that's how it works when you rip the matrix out of you.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Everybody, you know, it's I was just to finish on that one, because I think it's quite important, because everybody wants out of this matrix, but ask yourself, are you really prepared to pay the price? The price is not for everybody.
Yeah. You have to give up a lot.
Absolutely, you have to,
and it rips you open in a lot of ways that you can't imagine.
exactly, and I think that also the sort of imagination about what escaping or exiting the matrix is very much perhaps misunderstood, or maybe what people like to think it is. You know, working from a beach somewhere in hot country and having a full bank account, that's not exiting the matrix. That's the TikTok version of exiting the matrix. You know, exiting the matrix is when you rip the programming out of yourself so badly that the matrix doesn't have any hooks anymore. It doesn't have anything on you to be able to sort of ping you with, send a ping signal, because nothing is receiving anymore. That is not comfortable. That is not a nice process, and it literally leaves you shattered. So yeah, ask yourself if you really want out of the matrix, because as long as you're in the matrix is actually supporting you.
You know, I have a I'm not going to say who it is, but I talked to somebody recently that's in my life, who made the comment. They were like, because they were like, well, you're doing all this research into the subject. Where are you going to go? And I was like, I don't care, but it's not coming back here. And their response was, yeah, that's okay. I'll just be recycled.
They said that?
Yeah. And I was like, really? Wow. But that's what happens when you've had you've had issues in your life, but if you've been spoiled and you've never had to really stress about a lot of stuff, then I guess you would have that perspective, maybe. I don't know. But I think a lot of people are comfortable with that, right?
I think, you know, I think you don't know what you don't know, right? That's the issue. So there's plenty of people who just, I mean, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah,
honestly,
exactly.
it's really nice. You don't have to deal with what we know. You know, it's an amazing place. We spoke before we started recording that once you know, once you find out, you cannot. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. There's no way back, right? But as long as you are in that safe spot of not knowing what the hell is going on, not understanding what's the price. Because the price is very clear for those who understand. For the price is very clear on a soul level. The price is, but in the first place, you kind of need to go a little bit beyond that everyday hustle, right? Most people are obviously in a position of just focusing on that daily hamster wheel, right? Going to work, coming back, eating, watching Netflix, sleeping, and repeat, right? But if you actually have the capacity to step back and ask any deeper questions, but most people don't want to do that. Most people don't want to do that. I mean, this is not, that's what I'm saying, this is not for everybody. Not everybody here is looking for something deeper. And unfortunately, probably that is the very effect or the very result of how far that sort of destruction has gone within them.
That makes sense.
So, Ola, I have a question for you. Do you have any tips or advice for people that are a little bit more new to waking up to the matrix? Tips on how they can ground more into their reality and feel more comfortable moving forward, seeing more of the truths of our reality?
Well, I think I might in a way surprise you with the answer, because it's not going to be the it's not gonna go down the expected trajectory of what you might think. I would actually say that, you know, take it from someone that has been down a lot of rabbit holes, and I think, you know, I don't have all the answers. I have not seen everything, but I would say that as much as I have seen, probably seeing more is not going to make much difference to my life and to my kind of level of knowing that this is not good. Okay, something needs to be done. I don't want to be recycled back into the same world. If we have a chance to do something about it, what is it, and let's do it. So what I would say to people is that, you know, ask yourself if digging and getting answers, going down all these different rabbit holes, is that truly giving you some answers? Is that changing your life? Because to me, it's about, is your life getting better? Is your life better as a result of whatever practices that you are following, whatever it is that you are participating in? How is that impacting your life? And of course, the truth is shattering. Yeah, the truth is shattering. But once you find out a little bit what's going on here, do you really need to keep spinning in there? Because that's another matrix game as well. I always say that the matrix is like a chessboard, right? We play, we are invited, not really invited, we're forced into the game, right? We're kind of being dragged into the game. But the game happens on many levels. There's a game for those who have no idea what's going on, but there is even more sophisticated game for those that do have a bit of an idea what's going on. And that game is there to pull you in, to keep you chasing, to keep you seeking answers, to keep you discovering or feeling like you're discovering all the time something new. But ask yourself, is that really leading you somewhere? Is that, because that answer, you know, is always a podcast away. It's 3 more episodes. It's, you know, few more books down the line, right? So I would say, which probably will be controversial, but I would actually say that there's, if you already know that there is a power above us that does not have our interest at heart, they don't care, right? There's a power that enslaved this world. Something is happening, there is an agenda that's unfolding, they are obviously orchestrating that agenda. That's probably all you need to know. And don't trust them. Don't listen. You know, if something is being pushed out there, do the opposite, or you know, don't give in to fear. That's probably all you need to know. That's already all you need to know. Everything else is just polishing the bars inside of the prison. You don't need to know exactly what color of shoes is being worn in the club. You don't need to exactly know, you know, the details of the trafficking or the details of, it's not nice. Know that it's happening, but you don't need to dig in every single rabbit hole, because that's how they want to keep you hooked. That's where your attention goes, because as long as you respond to the trigger, and the trigger is coming from them, they invent all these triggers, you know, the resets, all these documentaries about resets, the reset is gonna come, you know, be afraid of this, be afraid of that, be afraid of the other. I mean, the more you just engage with all that, the more you continue to dig into that, it actually doesn't lead you anywhere other than to a place of anger, frustration, fear, right? Nothing's really positive is happening for you. You tell yourself that this is the truth. You're discovering the truth. You're on a journey to discovering something. Well, are you really?
So you're saying ground in the knowledge. Once you realize what's going on, ground in that and quit chasing your tail into these other things, basically.
Absolutely. I would say that probably once you become aware of the construct and the matrix, and you kind of it very quickly enough of the information will land in your system, and you pretty much, it kind of saturates what you need to know. You don't have to keep digging so much deeper. It doesn't actually give you so much more, but what it does, it's on purpose hooks you into chasing, this is the hamster wheel for the awakened. This is the hamster wheel for the awakened. This is a program. This constant healing, seeking, researching, digging, watching, listening, etc. I mean, how is that not a hamster wheel? That's a hamster wheel for the so-called awakened, for the so-called truthers, right? The truth seekers, etc. Well, ask yourself, where is it really taking you? Is it really taking you somewhere? How is that impacting your life?
There's that engineering background right there. And it like once you get the facts, you don't keep going back and rehashing the same problem over and over again if you solve it.
Right.
So there's that background coming into play, which is helpful in this regard, I think, for sure. Well, so speaking of the prison, and we're talking about escaping it, one of our listeners, as we talked about before we began, mentioned that you got, I don't know whose podcast it was, Ron, but they mentioned that you got cut off and you never got to finish your answer because they derailed you. But how do you think this all got started? What is your perspective on that?
So that's a very good question, and you see, I think that we have to be, first of all, we have to be very careful about opinions. I don't like the opinions, the whole idea of opinions. I like the notion of the truth, because opinions are coming from all sorts of directions, and it is part of the whole disinformation, right? We are living in this era of misinformation where everybody is just given equal rights to speak about whatever, and then it's just a mess. Back to how it all started. You see, yes, I do not call myself a researcher. However, I do call myself a bit of a pain in the ass when it comes to putting things together. And I went after the mythologies, the legends. Why? Because of course the text, the written tradition can be manipulated, and it has, but still it has been manipulated in a way where it's been pretty much flipped. So if you unflip it, you're back where you kind of want to be, right? You're back to getting the picture as it originally was presented. So this is why I like to go back to mythology. I like to go back to legends. I like to go back to fairy tales, because that is an oral tradition which happens to be across the whole earth, right? From different geographies, and it's very consistent. It is very consistent. So are the texts. The written texts are also very consistent. They might have been manipulated. The mythology was manipulated as well, but things are consistent. So when you know how to decipher that, when you kind of know how to look into that, there is only one truth. We don't need opinions. It's all there. It's all there. And the accounts from, for example, from the Sumerian tablets or from the ancient texts talk about a race that came here to Earth to chasing after something very, very important, because at their level they disconnected from the feminine principle, as in the males disconnected. They were in conflict with the females because they started operating against life. The females always, in any system out there, the females always stand for life. They defend life because they are the life bringers, they are the life givers, they hold the portal, they are the ones, they are the creators. So the males started pursuing or acting out of slightly different principles. So dominance, aggression, they sort of wanted that hegemony over in a sort of geographical context. So the females cut them off, and the males knew. I'm talking the Draco constellation. I'm talking that space. They knew that without the females, they're not able to create. This is something that I think is misunderstood, because we do not really realize the capacity of a woman as a creator. And it's not only giving birth to children, that's actually a very little portion of that, but it is being a true creator. She is the one who brings realities into being, literally through the very biology and endocrinology of her system. So these beings, they knew that if they want to create, and they did, because they went after that hegemony, they wanted to rule themselves, they wanted to be the creators, they wanted to be the gods. So they knew that they have to go after, they have to find themselves females. And this is what mythology describes as the wars up in heavens. They went after the Pleiades, they went after Vega, they went after other constellation, Andromeda, etc. And there were galactic wars that are described in the Sumerian tablets. And finally, to kind of cut a long story short, but the final sort of point that they came after was the earth. And they came after the females of the earth. They never created the race, the human race. They arrived here, and the humans were already here. These are the stories of the Titans. These are the stories of the original, in every mythology. Think about it, in every mythology. For example, in the Norse mythology, this is why I love it. The giants, the race of giants, that's what they are called, Jotun. If somebody from Norway is watching, or somebody is interested in the mythology, Jotun and Jotunheim. Jotun, the giants, predate the gods. They are older and more powerful in mythology than the gods. So when the gods come, the giants are already here. Who are the giants? The giants are the original inhabitants of the earth. So they meet the giants, and well, things happen, right? So this is the origin. They came here looking for females, but they had a very advanced technology. So it's a little bit, I always explain that this is like a story of Avatar, the movie, right? So they always tell us how things are, but in Avatar, even there, they managed to invert the whole story. So you have the humans coming and attacking the Avatar world, the Avatar planet, right? Where in reality, the story was the other way around. So somebody came here and invaded, attacked humans, or at the time, right? Because remember that we have been dealing over time with DNA experimentation. Mm-hmm. So the way we look and the way we, the capacity of our system right now has been deeply, deeply reduced. So probably including our physical appearance, right? We have been, well, very much diminished sort of in our capacity. So back in the day, we were dealing or looking differently, or humans at the time looked differently. But remember that we carry the DNA, right? Where even the scientists tell us that 96% of our DNA is junk. I mean, seriously, such an error in design. So what's going on? What is in that 96% of DNA that's not coding protein? So what is it doing? What is it holding? What kind of information? Well, we know, again, back from the oral traditions, back from the feminine stories and mythology. And if you know the code of deciphering these teachings, then you know everything is out there in the open. Gnostics talk about it, right? So that is the history as per the story. So this is what Sitchin later was kind of using and expanding upon.
Okay.
Right, but yeah, so we have a race, and that's reflected in mythologies. That's why, for example, in Vedic teachings, right, we have the gods, and we have the demons, the asuras. There's always some other side, some other power that always gets really bad marketing. And you know who gives them the bad marketing, right? Because the history is written by the winners, not by the losers.
That's always true. Yeah. Well, and I thought when you were talking about the that they needed the female, I mean, even in the Bible, right, there's that part where they said that the angels that fell, they thought the women of man was good, and they took, remember, right?
Exactly.
That kind of thing. It's that kind of, okay, so that's what we're looking at there. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, and I know Devin, because again, being that this is new to me, Devin, you've referenced that these things can copy, but they can't create whatever's running this. So I had asked Volnya in the email, do you think that that's where misogyny is present? Like it's inherent and embedded in the system because of a jealousy of it and a resistance to the idea that it requires us to exist? Do you think that that's part of it?
I mean, that's an amazing point you've made, because we, misogyny, one aspect, patriarchy, right? Patriarchy is about as old as when they lost grip on, or let's put it this way, patriarchy dates back probably as around the time when they started making sure that females lose their powers. So of course, have they been jealous? Of course. I mean, look at it. Look at how this realm is constructed. Everything that the woman should be ashamed of and feel guilty of, the man is okay. Yeah. And that is reflected in our culture. That is reflected in our programming. This whole inversion into a woman who serves the man, right? A woman who is inferior to the man. So when we look from the alchemical perspective, a woman doesn't actually need a man, because a woman in our biology, and I will explain that in the needing the man, in our biology, we have everything that we need to bring the souls into this realm and also to depart from this realm. We have everything that's needed to avoid the reincarnation cycle. But the man needs to be anointed by a woman. A man needs to be guided by the woman, a shaman, through that realm. He needs to be introduced to certain things through a woman. A man cannot experience certain things without a woman. And back in the ancient times, that was a natural thing. This is why when you look into legends, all the kings, they knew that they needed a consort. They needed a queen. They needed a queen so that the land could be fertile. They needed a queen so that the reign that they held would be successful, right? That they would be actually able to have some influence and impact. Remember that scene from 300, the movie 300. There's a scene where the Persian messenger, just before the war was about to break, the Persian messenger comes to King Leonidas, and well, he tries to negotiate the surrender of the Spartan kingdom. And that's obviously a massive dishonor, because Spartans, they were known for that fierce spirit and never giving up, even though they were absolutely outnumbered by the Persians, right? And what happens? So the King Leonidas, the messenger is standing with this bottomless pit right behind. I don't know if you remember that scene. And King Leonidas is about to kick him into that pit. Right before he does that, what does he do? He turns around and looks at his wife. His wife, the queen, is standing behind, right? She's standing behind him. Right before he makes that final call and execution, he looks at the queen. Why? Because men knew that while they might be the ones who rule and execute in the 3D, in this kind of realm, in that physicality, the woman is the leader in much higher realms. The woman is the one who can see much further. She is the one who, in a way, needs to give consent because she's connected. She can see and she can feel things in a much wider context. So men back in the day knew very well how that works. Right?
So is that why most societies way back were matriarchal in nature, it looks like?
Well, matrilineal, I would say, because matriarchal,
okay.
it kind of suggests that, women.
Oh, hierarchy, yeah.
Hierarchy, right? Hierarchy, remember, it's not a construct of humans. It's not even a construct of humans. Hierarchy, the pyramid is their construct. Mm-hmm. It's their construct. They brought the layers of somebody on top and somebody at the bottom. This whole notion of that only one person, only the king, the queen needs to be on top and everybody else is underneath them. That's not a human construct. That's their construct. So very much women back in the day would absolutely stand as the oracles. What does it mean? They were connected to so much more. They were literally, they were the shamans. They were walking in the realms that men had no access to. So in order to resurrect, right, from this realm, before you die, you had to resurrect before you die. A woman had all the tools for that. Man needed a concert. Man needed a woman. But all that, it got forgotten, right? A woman has been made into subordinate functions, right? She was kind of made to serve a man. She was made to obey a man. And we know that also from the Bible, because not many people know that the way things are written in the Bible. For example, the moment when Adam and Eve get cast out of Eden, and Yahweh is sort of cursing the woman, cursing the snake as well, cursing the serpent, cursing both of them. In the curses, what's really captured in there is the fact that Yahweh, at that point, there's been genetic interventions into the genetic material of humans to literally write into our genetic material that a woman is going to be subservient to the man. A woman is to serve her man, her husband, and a man is to rule over the woman. This is written into the code, into our DNA. This is why it is such a strong programming. And back to, patriarchy and misogyny, it's kind of embedded in the code. It sits that deep.
Look at what it's become to the degree of not only subservience, but even the idea of being free from that is, I mean, you really have to look, people do what you want, but I don't think as a woman that you've got to show all your business in the media and all of the I've witnessed it among college girls. I mean, college girls who weren't gay kissing another girl in front of their boyfriend when they're drunk because why are you doing that? Why are you degrading yourself? And I'm not saying, I mean, unless you wanted to do that, that's fine, but would you have done that if you weren't drunk? Otherwise, probably not, right? So I kind of see how the extreme of that today, how subversive.
I mean, I think it also stems from the whole sexual freedom going wrong at some point, right? Because it very much flipped polarities at some point, probably around the 60s, when we had all this revolution, right? Because up until that moment, there was this very strict sort of approach to sexuality, and then suddenly things flipped. And I think what it went wrong is that women started understanding promiscuity as freedom,
Yeah.
the same way as women understand nudity as some kind of freedom. I mean, I'm sorry, it's embarrassing. I mean, there's nothing to be ashamed of about our bodies, but I'm talking about even right now in the new agey circles, right? We have these women coming together for some kind of nonsense women's circles and having pictures taken. Well, I'm sorry, I just say it how it is, and having pictures
True
taken
though.
naked with their breasts out in some kind of feathers and nonsense, and that gets smeared all over Facebook as if this is some kind of statement of your
Exactly.
power. This is not a statement of your power. This is embarrassing. This is a woman who has zero self-worth. Where is your value as a woman if you think that your power is coming from the fact of being naked?
Yeah,
Really?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that totally.
Yeah.
So it all, I don't think it went wrong. I think it got steered in a certain way, because you
On
see,
purpose, probably.
from absolutely from alchemical point of view, which is of course you know that I speak so much about that alchemical context, because it is important in the current times. When a woman engages in these kind of activities, in these kind of behaviors, when a woman doesn't value herself, doesn't respect herself, it automatically blocks the alchemy. And they are afraid of alchemy, because alchemy in a woman, meaning what a woman is capable of as a result of having her full hormonal system online and performing functions that most people have no clue that the woman is capable of. If she can activate that, that is the biggest threat to this establishment. Precisely that. Precisely that is the biggest threat. So what they're doing everything to navigate the woman out of that space by making women, for example, take on roles and behaviors that are very, very not disturbing, but they basically sort of take them out of that element. Women who sacrifice, women who have zero self-respect, women who engage in all sorts of sexual activities that are just promiscuity, right, wrapped as freedom. Women who act out of sort of behaviors where they do things against themselves. They go and participate in things that are not doing anything for them. Women who are pushed into the corporate jobs and told that they have to go and act like men and compete with men. Like, you're not a man, you're a woman. You're built in a different way. You don't have to prove anything that way. I've been there myself. I mean, hey, right? I mean, that was 15 years for me. So yeah, it's the whole system is created to not just push you in that direction, but to reward you for that, to literally make you want that, as if that's some kind of noble outcome, right? Well, for whom?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and when you use the word alchemy, I wanted to clarify that too, because
Yeah.
I've read the Emerald Tablets and myself, and then was kind of getting into alchemy from the point of view of the whole ritualistic aspect of it, which what I get from you is you're more talking about the symbology, like you said, what that means for a woman's system, what it means for as a woman to come back into her power, but not the whole, let's try to get some gold. Let's try to turn some metal
Well,
into gold, or like
good
worship.
good
So I
good
thought I'd
point.
ask
And
you to clarify that.
yeah, good point and good question. Let's get some gold. So in a context of literally turning lead into gold for materialistic purposes, right? Like, let's let's get some gold, let's get some more noble element out of less noble, so that this is the result, right? That's masculine alchemy. That's not the alchemy that I'm talking about. The feminine alchemy, which also talks about turning lead into gold, but the question is, what is lead and what is gold? And no, it is not the elements, the chemical elements. It's not that. Lead and gold in feminine alchemy, that's why I specifically say feminine alchemy, is lower vibrational energies into higher vibrational energies. That's the lead and that's gold, right? That's and actually emerald tablets, they do talk about feminine alchemy, but the way those texts are manipulated, those texts are rewritten, so it's really, you have to know what you're looking at to be able to read those texts. So when I talk about feminine alchemy in the context of a woman, the feminine alchemy describes the full capacity, the full spectrum of a woman's hormonal system. That's why it's alchemy, hormonal system, and what that hormonal system can deliver, and what is it really designed to do? Because the reason why it's called alchemy is because that hormonal system within us operates through secretions. So secretions are sort of substances that are created within our bodies. Sometimes they are in micro doses, sometimes they are a little bit bigger doses, right? It depends what kind of fluids, what kind of secretions we're talking about. And these secretions are literally the gateway to alchemy. The question is, are these secretions, are these substances, well, alchemical? Do they contain something more or not? That's why it's not chemistry, it's alchemy. So what does the alchemy enable? Well, one of the most perhaps well-known or well-represented aspects, which probably not many people know that that's exactly what happened, is immaculate conception. A woman's body is capable, and it's written in our DNA. It's written in our DNA. Woman's body is capable of immaculate conception, which is precisely what we are witnessing with Mother Mary. And so parthenogenesis is the immaculate conception. Jesus, so this whole notion, in the Bible, that Mary gets pregnant, how is it possible? It's impossible because it's some kind of, Holy Ghost came upon her and all that. Parthenogenesis. Why is she called Mother Mary? Mary, by the way, Mary is not a name, because when you look into the Bible, there is, most of the women are called Marys. So it's like, what are there not any other names over there? There are, because Mary, Mary is not a name, it's a title. It's an alchemical title. Mary, Mar from French, the one of the chalice, right? Mary is, what it means from Aramaic is the one who knows the secret of the Grail. It's the title. It's an alchemical title. So these women, Mother Mary, Mary Salome, Mary Jacobi, Mary Magdalene, etc., etc., these are titles. These are titles to highlight, to sort of give us information about the fact that these women were introduced and initiated into high level of alchemy. So parthenogenesis being one of our native functions. Do we have access to it now? Well, hard to say, because it's individual. It depends. Is your alchemy on stream or not? Is it active or not? What else? The ability to contact the void, right? The 0 point field, and bring from there anything you want. That's the flow. That's the contact with the abundance. So giving birth, not just to children. The children is the kind of physical aspect of the birthing function in a woman. But woman births, as in woman materializes into this realm. How? Well, probably not in a way that literally things are coming out of us, right? Other things than children, but in a way that things materialize into the reality. Another aspect, feeding, breastfeeding. You might have seen artwork where women breastfeed men, grown men. The same kind of artwork, sculptures are in Egypt, for example, Inanna breastfeeding Osiris, so her husband, not just Horus, not just the son, not just the baby. She breastfeeds Horus way past the infancy. So she breastfeeds Horus, her son, when he's 8-10 years old as a boy. So what's going on there? That is another alchemical function, another alchemical aspect where a woman is sort of providing the reality of milk and honey, right? What is flowing from the breasts? Milk, but what used to flow was honey, or what was called honey, right? What does that mean? It means that the woman is creating, she's feeding this reality with certain things. That's the flow. A woman needs to be in the flow, right? Why is woman the guardian of fertility? Because of this. Because she gives birth and she feeds. So right now our function has been reduced to just having children, right? And feeding children. That's what we know. That's what most women think about, right? And that's been accepted. But actually the spectrum is much wider. And it does, there is a relationship between the level of activating of our DNA, and as a function of that, we are able to activate much more capacity of the hormonal system. And these things are natural. You have to understand, these things that I'm describing, they sound crazy and they sound like, what? Like, how do we do this? You don't think about it. You don't have to. That's the good news. You don't have to think about it. Just like a woman who's pregnant, I always give that analogy. When a woman is pregnant and there is a baby inside of her connected with the woman through umbilical cord, right? Devin has a baby there, I'm hearing from Angie. So Devin knows. But the point is, when you have a baby inside of you, as a woman, you don't have to think every day, oh, I need to now feed this baby inside of me. I need to send some vitamins in there. I need to send some nutrients. Oh, maybe I need to evacuate something toxic. Maybe that, maybe you don't think about it. It doesn't matter if you make intentions, meditations, whatever, it's irrelevant. It will happen anyway. Why? Because that's the design. That's the alchemical intelligent design. It works because that's what you are made for. The only thing that you have to worry about is being sort of in the right state as the mother, right? Being in that unconditional love so that that baby is really getting the right experience. And the same happens to be that's the same modus operandi for the rest of the spectrum of alchemy. It's just that the issue is most women do not have access to that. They do not have access to that. Why? The reason for that is because we have been infected with the matrix, overlay. So we have lost contact with the raw, true signal, with the raw field. So we have lost signal with something more. The raw field, what is that? How to understand that? Understand it as connection with through energetic cord with a womb. Maybe cosmic womb or the earth womb, wherever is that 0 point field, as physics call it, right? That unlimited potential, that place from which you can bring in anything. That's what we have been, in a way, disconnected from. And that is precisely what these women from the Bible, what they were trained, maybe not trained is not the word, but they were brought up in a way in those Gnostic teachings, we have an echo of those, to be able to reactivate that alchemy within them.
So that's your perspective on it.
Well, that's what we know from,
right.
That's what we know from the ancient texts. That's what we know from oral tradition. That's what we know from the old women. I'm not really interested. Like I said, I'm not interested in creating opinions here where we already have the answers from the feminine line, from the teachings. These are indigenous teachings. These are native people's teachings. When you take off the layers of, that things have been maybe slightly sort of dressed up, because it's not for everybody, right? These teachings had to be smuggled. They had to be in a way. It's a little bit like right now we cannot just openly speak about everything, right? Everything is censored. So in order to contain some kind of teachings, I need to wrap them up. I need to package them in a way that's not that obvious.
And what I meant by that is that, like, the word alchemy, that's what you're describing, versus the version of you have to do all these rituals and you do all this other, like, all that stuff. That's why I wanted that clarification and distinction, because most people associate it with the latter that I just brought up. And I even did. Like, the first time I heard you say that word, I was like, no, Ola, don't mention alchemy. Don't. Well, thank you, Ola, for the clarification on the alchemy, because I think that's going to be really helpful for people not to associate it with how it's traditionally interpreted. And I like the view, not the view. It's not even a view, like you said, it's truth. I like the truth. So we're good on that, and I really appreciate your taking the time to expand on that. I'm curious to get your take on. I struggle with illness, and I know a lot of people in the world. We have just illness everywhere, cancer, autoimmune. What is your view on illness, right? Most people say it's maybe you're possessed, maybe it's demonic oppression, maybe it's this or the other, but we also have toxins in the environment as well. So where do you come down on illness?
So I think it's a really good question. It's a really broad question as well, because absolutely, as you say, some aspects of illness you cannot just attribute to necessarily emotions or certain sort of energy-based aspects, right? Because like you say, we're poisoned all the time. There are toxins everywhere, and of course the body sooner or later is going to start reacting, right? I would go a step backwards, however, and look a little bit into the fact that, well, we are all poisoned, but not everybody is going to react in such a severe way, or perhaps not so quickly, right? So there is a level of perhaps resistance or susceptibility to some kind of factor that's external or maybe even internal. So I can definitely speak from the code perspective, the matrix code, and I'll use astrology numerology, because as it happens, we do have a field in astrology which is the medical astrology, which looks specifically at potential illnesses, which is part of the code. I also work a little bit with potential exposure points through numerology. So I look into your numerology code and I look at what potentially could be exposed. So how does that work? Is that basically matrix targets certain body organs or certain conditions that you are much more susceptible, and there is a link, whether that's through emotions, through trauma, through whatever you've been exposed to. There is some kind of weakness in the body, which means, or in the immune system, which means that the way the body should respond to it is just not happening, or it is a little bit and perhaps delayed, or just something is not working in an optimal way. So what I would say is that for anybody struggling with illness, I would definitely look into the code itself to see what matrix kind of presented you with, what matrix, because you see some people, I don't want to really go into the whole astrology lesson right now, but some people through their code are a little bit more predisposed to certain conditions, and just for the health to be more of an issue or more a topic, just like some of us will struggle with toxic men that we meet. Others,
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Others will struggle with illnesses. So it's like it's different fields, different aspects. So certainly I would look what kind of cards you've been dealt with in the matrix game, if there is any special exposure point coming specifically through astrology, through numerology for you in your code, because like I say, you see, all of us will get something, but not all of us will be responding in the same way. And of course, there is an element of that emotional aspect, right? If there is something around rejecting or harboring certain emotions, perhaps guilt, shame, etc. Well, they never help, right? They never help. I mean, cancer, etc. You can trace that back. I'm right now writing a book. I don't even want to mention that because I've been promising that book for a year now, and the book's nowhere to be seen. But in that book, I specifically focused on conditions of feminine imbalance. So a lot of ailments or conditions that are to do with whether the hormonal aspects, the breasts, the uterus, etc., all the sort of feminine areas. And you can see very clearly that there's a lot of emotions, a lot of behaviors, a lot of sort of programming that can be behind. And this is not me saying that, this is research, this is medical research linking certain things, showing how for women engaging in certain behaviors or operating out of certain emotions, there is a link, unfortunately, to a certain condition that happens to manifest. But it doesn't mean it will manifest for everybody. So I like to always marry that with a chart to see, is there an exposure point? Have you been targeted by the code to specifically, and Devin, you work with astrology as well, right? We spoke a little bit before. So you know what I'm talking about, right? There are certain sort of aspects, like I say, I don't want to get too technical into astrology, but there are certain things that can sit in the chart, also in numerology, that are going to highlight, they're going to sort of show that specifically for you in your design, you have been more exposed in that context. I don't know if that's helpful, if that makes sense.
No, it is. It's very helpful, and I think, and that's because a lot of people are struggling, even with even something that might not be debilitating, that's like something like even diabetes, right? That's prevalent on the planet right now, and so if you get, and then a lot of people passing that baggage on of how much sin was in your life, or it's demonic oppression. Nobody needs to hear that on top of. I mean, if it's true, yes, yeah, it's good to know, but that's not always the blame. And I think whether it's in the new age, like if in the new age, it means that your vibration is low. If you're a new ager and you get sick, they're going to tell you your vibration is low. And if you just raise your frequency and vibration, you'll heal it, right?
Yeah, but what does that even mean?
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or if you just get rid of the sin, there's too much sin, or if you just, or you demonic, or my favorite is, oh, well, it's possession. Well, I don't feel demonically possessed. I mean,
yeah.
It doesn't, nobody's picking up on that. So I just wanted to get your take on that. And then something else you could probably answer with a yes or no without even a lot of explanation is, so if I did ask this in the email to you, if somebody, and again, trigger warning, and I'm not advocating for anybody to do this, it's just a question for discussion. If somebody figures this out, right? Like if I talk to you and we look at, okay, these are the things in your astrological chart to overcome, and I get my feminine alchemy all in line, and then I self-delete, would I just get out?
And you
like self, I'm using, I said self-delete because I'm trying to use I don't want to use the actual word and get a strike, but basically take myself out intentionally. Would I just automatically, like, in other words, why, if you stay in the system, aren't you just perpetuating and feeding them?
Well, it's
and I know, and if you don't want to answer the question, that's fine too.
Absolutely, but I think we should. So I think we need to look into the very mechanism. What does it mean to feed the matrix? How does the matrix really work? Because I think I think this is still a little bit misunderstood. That the matrix feeds off your emotional, especially low vibrational. Sorry for the new age language, but low vibrational as in low emotions of that kind of output. That's what they feed off. So they siphon these they want to cause that you produce these kind of emotions. So what we're talking about: guilt, shame, fear, depression, crying, lush. lush. Yeah, that's what it's called, lush. That's the food. That's what they want, because they don't operate in the high spectrum. They operate in the low spectrum. That's what they feed off. So that's what they want to siphon. So the whole matrix, including the zodiac, the passive programming and the active playing out of scenarios in your life, is set up for you to engage in certain behaviors and emotions, reaction, right? And specifically what they're interested in is the low vibrational emotion, is the low vibrational content. So now, what does it mean to leave the matrix? Well, what it means to, or what does it mean when the matrix stops its influence, having an influence, right? What's that about? What are the Gnostics talking about when they talk about exiting the matrix? Well, they talk about collapsing that matrix infestation of programming, etc., inside of you, because the matrix is inside of us. It's not outside, it's inside. We are infested. That's why when they ping us, I use that, right? You carry a program. So you carry a program, they ping you, matrix pings you, and as long as the program is there, it will answer, right? There will be a response because it's still there. So the point is to remove that infestation, remove the programs from you, so that even when the ping comes from the matrix, there's nothing, there's void, there's nothing to answer. So the point is to step outside of roles, to step outside identities that you might have. You know, I am a healer, I am a single mother, whatever, right? I am the victim, I am this, I am that, my life is like this, whatever it could be. Traumas, right? Trauma tells you a story. There are stories that we tell ourselves to remain in a certain situation or in a certain way. So all this kind of programming that's in some way holding you back, it's negative, it's not making you expand, it's kind of keeping you down. It's all the thoughts of depression, anxiety, sadness, not accepting yourself, sacrificing, thinking that this is what I have to do because otherwise, you know, I'm looking to be validated, I'm looking to be loved, I'm looking to be accepted. All that are those points that the matrix is going to be coming and trying to hook into. If you can get rid of that from yourself, there is nothing for them to come and hook in. And you see, this goes further into this whole notion of what do you do after death, not to be reincarnated. And I'll go there in a minute. I'll get there in a minute. But the point is, as long as you have the hooks, as long as that infestation is there, you cannot leave. You will, because you don't decide to leave. If you activate alchemy, you only will activate, the alchemy will activate itself when enough of that infestation is removed. Because it is the infestation that's keeping you away. It's like a layer. I have a webinar on that, by the way. It's called Matrix Formula. And then another one, which is called Final Gate, where I explain all the conditions on exactly why we are, what does it truly mean to leave the matrix. So as long as this infestation is in us, as long as you are available to respond to the matrix triggers, you're caught in the matrix. But when you stop, when enough of that architecture collapses in you, which, by the way, that's what the Gnostics call ego death. Ego death is a misunderstood concept. It is not about not having a personality or acting like an amoeba, you know, now my ego is dead, so now I'm just floating, you know, in 5D, some nonsense. No, that's not. Ego, as understood by the Gnostics, is the infestation by the matrix. So ego death is about removal of that infestation, meaning the programs, the conditioning, the traumas, whatever they could have hooked onto you with. That's what it is about. And you see why in shamanic circles, right? The initiations were about taking the person into unknown territory, exposing them to tough conditions, very often maybe even leaving them for days without food and just making them fight for survival. Why? Because those conditions created something in the person. It wasn't safe. It made them face the biggest fears. It made them face the parasite inside of them. It made them face their own programming. Why? So that it could crash, collapse, because they survive. So they would outsmart, they would outperform. Are you with me? They would literally outperform the algorithm. That's the engineer speaking to the shamanic rites.
There
okay.
You go.
So there you go. That's why it wasn't comfortable, because that person, if they would come back, if they would make it, they would come back a different person. Can that happen to us? Absolutely. And that happens many times to people. How? Because some of us will go through a very tough experience. It could be anything from maybe death of a loved one, or maybe loss of a job that used to be your identity. That's what happened to me. That's what happened to me. If you, in that process, do not reach for scaffolding, meaning you let yourself hit the ground really and shatter that part of you that used to identify with that, or that used to live from that vantage point, if you let it shatter, you're making a hole in that parasitic infestation. And so literally part of your ego has died. Unless you reach out for I always say, unless you try to soft land yourself, unless you reach out for, for scaffolding. What does that mean? It means that maybe you try to quickly run and give yourself a different meaning to life, or maybe you run and quickly try to find someone else to tell you that you're gonna be okay. So basically, you never hit the wall. If you don't hit the wall, it doesn't happen. If somebody catches you, or something catches you, or you redirect your attention, it's not gonna happen. But those moments do happen, and this is why some of us wake up. This is exactly why some of us wake up. Not only wake up, but it is that part of you, that infestation, that cracks, and suddenly you start feeling the signal, the field. You start operating from something real. Suddenly you start seeing the truth without needing evidence. Suddenly,
so would that also mean too, like if you're stepping out of things that restricted you before too?
Yeah.
Like that, like, so because I'm questioning everything about even what it means to be me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, like the personality or whatever. And like Devin,
yeah.
I know Devin wasn't, isn't, I guess, an extrovert would be the right word, right, Devin? And you stepped out of that, like just continually trying to step out of what you think you can't do because you're programmed with it. Is that what you're saying? And letting go of all of it, like just
the very process, or the very event that I'm describing, I gave it a name: collapse.
Yeah.
Ego collapse or ego death. That is not something that you control,
right,
or you invite upon yourself. It's an event. It happens to you.
It's just happening.
Not something that you can go and chase. I would say that probably what you're describing is more of an effect of such event that happened to you a few months ago, or whenever was that threshold moment for you, that suddenly you started questioning everything. I would say that something crashed, and it's not always a death. It's not always like that. It could have been that somebody said something to you, or it could have been that you didn't get the reaction that you normally get to whatever circumstances, and it kind of destabilized you, and maybe you were destabilized enough for that to tip you over.
Gotcha. Okay.
You see what I'm saying? But now, for example, if you, the point is that if you are truly in that space that I'm describing, you will be disoriented. You will not know what the hell to think. You will not know where to go. You will be actually quite depressed or feeling like you are like this is hopeless, that's the feeling. If you try looking for meaning, if you try, that, then you will actually hijack the process. So the point is to let yourself land, crash land. That's so if you feel uncomfortable, if you don't have the answers, great, stay with it, stay there, let it shatter, let
that
it
sucks.
collapse.
So that's where
I
I'm
know
at.
it sucks.
Oh,
Let it
it's awful.
do it. Let it happen, because you see, this is what happened to me. In 2017, 2018, I had been working in oil and gas for all these years. I had this kind of career with me taking a job here up north. It was like the top sort of top tier job in a startup company here, and everything came crashing down. Like the job was not going to happen anymore. I needed to step back. And suddenly my whole identity of, who am I? If you take away the titles, the status, the prestige, who am I? Who am I? Like, I'm no one. How am I going to survive? Who am I? What am I? Even how are people going to recognize me? Like, where's my value? That was my question. I had to find my worth, my value, and I had to find who I am outside of oil and gas, outside of fancy title, outside of the job that, everybody was proud of in my family. And suddenly I'm not that. So what am I? I'm nothing. And that needs to be good enough, but it's not, right? Because that's not how we're programmed to believe our worth is about. So nobody caught me in that moment. Nobody helped me. If anything, I had everybody against me, because my family was not really impressed with the fact that I wasn't desperately trying to climb back into oil and gas. So I know it's not nice. I know it's uncomfortable. Just like it's not nice when in shamanic initiation, someone gets dropped in the middle of nowhere and needs to survive. It's not nice, and in shamanic initiations, they would say that it was never a safe process and nobody guaranteed that you will come back. What does it mean that you will come back? People lose it. People literally, mentally lose it. So it's not guaranteed.
I took mushrooms back in, and I don't recommend anybody doing it. And that almost brought me to because I'd heard with plant medicine, there's been a lot of, a snap of a finger, miraculous healings or whatever. That's why I had use that plant medicine and did the 5 grams, plus the whole ego death, the false ego death that promotes. I was looking for that as well, and it almost you talk about the mind. I mean, it almost broke my mind for 24 hours. And I don't recommend people doing it. But yeah, that's a whole nother different ball of wax. But yeah, I get what from that perspective, and having gone through that experience, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That you could psychologically break.
Absolutely, but this is the thing, that you cannot really monetize it per se, because it's a personal experience. They would have obviously, in the shamanic cultures, they would have literally dropped the person somewhere to face their fears, but these days we don't really do that, right? We're a little bit more we coddle ourselves a little bit more, so that's not the way to go. But the Gnostics and these indigenous cultures, they knew that the only way is for you need to collapse that ego understood as the matrix programming. It needs to collapse within you, and it doesn't collapse from intention. It doesn't collapse from you doing some weird rituals or circles or dancing to the moon.
Right.
No, it unfortunately collapses when you're in deep crap, trying to survive, trying to find a way forward when it's dark. And I'm not talking some dark night of the soul or whatever. I'm just saying that this can literally happen to a person either through external circumstances. It can also happen through just meeting someone who will shake you, who will say something to you and will shake you out of your boots. That can happen too, because some people carry that kind of energy. The way they react to you, or the way they don't react, or the way they say something or whatever, they push, they touch, very often that happens to people in relationships, but at the moment, people don't want to listen, right? So, but yeah, it's one of the biggest destabilizing scenarios, right? Is the relationship, especially when you get your rug pulled from underneath your feet. So yeah, and it's not a one time, it's those need to happen because there's a lot of maybe not layers, because it's not like now you have to undergo thousands of those, right? But I'm not saying that one time is enough. It might be that you will experience that few times, but there is no healing here. It's not about you can heal yourself out of matrix programming. No, you can't. No, you don't.
You have to
Doesn't
go
work
through
like
it.
that.
Yeah.
There's nothing to heal. It's just the infestation to be taken out.
And you
And
have
when
to become so you're saying that these events that shake you or the collapse is what brings you to the awareness of getting that stuff, that programming out, right?
Yeah.
And so for people who don't wake
It's
up to it, you're not going to get out, which answers the question I asked you.
It takes you out. It literally, it deletes. It makes it as if certain programs that you run, that you used to have, it's like they've never been there. Like there's no reference point anymore. It's I was in a situation where, let's say, I had fear of abandonment, right? I had that fear. It was kind of running my life and some scenarios for me, and suddenly I found myself in a situation where, well, I didn't even know it in a moment, because this is not a restaurant. You don't pick an order what you want to happen. It just happens, But suddenly I find myself, after quite a heavy situation, and that whole fear of abandonment is just not present anymore. It's like I cannot even refer to it. It's like it's never been there. Because it's like it gets ripped out of your system. There's no reference point. You don't feel it. It doesn't get deleted. It's like it gets erased. It doesn't get healed. That there's no healing. It gets deleted. It's like there's no reference point. So you don't heal your fear of abandonment. You destroy, literally that part of that matrix infestation, that parasite that's responsible for that. It gets starved. It gets erased. It's just not there. There's no reference point. There's nothing. There's void. So you just don't feel it. And you don't even remember, why have you ever had that fear? Because it's just not part of you. It's like it's not native to you. That's the feeling, and that's what people don't talk about. But that's what Gnostics talk about. Not only Gnostics, that's what the witches talk about, the wise women. That it's the New Age came up with all the methods and all the healings and all these paths and everything, where actually the thing that works is the thing that is most natural, but a little bit not in our control.
Well, and I think even our modern psychology does that too, right? There's all kinds of therapies, modalities. And again, I'm not trying to tell people not to go to therapy. The fact that we have to tell other adults and put these safety features out there for people to think for themselves kind of annoys me, but I'm just trying to be responsible. But I'm just saying, it's like I went to years of therapy, and therapy has you focus on your trauma. You talk about it, you talk about it, you talk about it, and then here's some skills. And so same thing the New Age does. Here's some rituals, or here's some process, or here's some belief system. And you're saying, you're right. I mean, when you get in the thick of it, I mean, I think, Devin, we've all been there. We can, in different ways, we can all test to the fact that when you're really in the thick of it and everything's collapsing, nothing's going to pull you out of it. Not any New Age ritualistic thing, not any belief system, and certainly not some sort of, hey, let me just sit here and do some cognitive behavioral exercises to get myself out of this. Right.
Well, I've seen many people that came to my events in Lofoten, because, like I say, I sort of team up with the land to create these kind of conditions. I mean, I'm not going to call it a shamanic initiation. I don't drop anybody in the middle of nowhere and leave them there, but I do apply pressure. I do apply sort of pressure. I draw certain things out of people. It's very uncomfortable. People hate me probably afterwards. But well, that's, you know, I never said it's comfy, but when they come here, you know, a lot of people have this idea, I've been to therapy for this, I've been to all sort of healing modalities for this and that, so that's sorted. And then, you know, literally a day or even sometimes hours into us being together, those things that they thought they had fixed come out. And, you know, the first reaction is like, hold on a minute, what's going on? I already been in therapy for this. I thought I fixed it. I did so much work on this. I did so much this and that. Well, why doesn't it work then? Why is it still here? Why are you still reacting from that place? You know, if all this is it's fixed, because healing is an illusion.
Yeah, I think I see logic, and there's definitely, that makes sense, because if you look at all of the crazy stuff that I've tried, I mean, I even bought, quote, you get desperate, you do stupid stuff. I bought holy water. I knew when I bought it from Mexico, hey, drink this, you'll heal.
Right. Yeah.
And that focus on that. And then I think I even asked Evan, is the obsession with healing and illness a hook, the matrix? Yeah, it probably is, right? You got, because you're running a program.
Well,
That's a hamster wheel.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the problem with healing is that healing is, it's a word that a lot of things got dumped under, and some of it is a total nonsense, but not everything. Because I think, you know, back in the day, right, we had the witches, or we had the sort of the women, that the shamans, the seers, right? You could go to her with your problem and she would do something and it would help. So what did she do? And if that's not healing, is that healing? What did she do? And I did a webinar to explain specifically, I called it field mechanics, because that's what shamans are. Shamans, witches, all these people from back in the day that would fix illnesses, or they would fix whatever issues that the person came with, and that could get called healing. But actually what they were doing, as I call it, field intervention. So they would be able, either with symbols or with sounds, or with the use of whatever other ways, to interfere with the field. What's a field? The fabric of this reality. This is why they would have a staff. This is why they wouldn't use runes. Runes, by the way, are not some kind of nice symbols. Runes are field commands. It's a command. Wow. It's a command. It looks it takes a certain shape because it does something. It is not something. It does something. That's why it needs to look, and that's why those shapes are a little bit like they don't mean anything, right? Runes, sigils, they are field commands. So it's not, you do not pick and choose what you like. You get an information from the field what's needed. The rune is a vector, is a field vector. It applies pressure. It changes the fabric of reality. This is why, for example, in old tradition as well, women, the whole notion of sewing and weaving, field, this is working with the field. The whole notion, why would, for example, in some traditions, some old day traditions, right, or sort of the witch doctors, what they would do, they would take a piece of string and they would, for example, tie a knot on there. That's a field command. These are field commands. I'm not gonna, we don't have time to explain exactly how it's done, but this is how it's done. Why they would have a staff and they would do something with the staff. Very often they would rotate the staff. They would hold the staff, they would rotate it, or they would take the staff and they would make certain sort of hand gestures with the staff or with the hand itself. Field command, changing, it's like changing, interfering with the fabric of reality. But how? Well, you have to have access first. You have to have access to the field. How do you have access to the field? By not being infested. First, you have to be not infested. That's why to become a shaman back in the day, it wasn't, you had to be collapsed. You had to not be infested. This is why they would drop. Very often there would be a test for the shaman. You get dropped somewhere, right? You have to survive. You have to survive. You have to face your fears. That would be very often the initiation. So that your ego, the Gnostic ego, dies, so that you can start having contact with the field, with the real, so that you suddenly see, not with these eyes, but with the eyes of truth. You don't need a proof for things. You just know. You just know what feels right, what doesn't feel right, what's the truth, what's not the truth. You don't even have to know the details. You don't even have to know the evidence this way or that way. It's not about that. You just know because you are connected to the field. So back in that context, in the shamanic, in the field mechanics context, back to your question about illness from before, illness was seen as a matrix infestation into the field. So a shaman would remove illness by detangling, for example, something in the field, if that's what happened, or changing the conditions, changing something in the field, striking the field. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's
no, it does.
that's
It does, because even our astrological Devin pointed out to me. She goes, if you even look at like a chart, she goes, have you seen one? And I go, yeah, she's like, if you really look at them, she goes, they look like a spider web when they get all drawn out. And so I went back and looked, and I was like, oh my God, it does. It looks like we're So when we come into this life, we're already in a trap.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like a fly in a web or whatever. So no, that makes perfect sense about the illness.
But you see that web, absolutely what Devin says, spot on, right? That web, that fake web, matrix web, I mean, you right behind you, right over there in the blue, that is layered on top of the field that I'm talking about.
Oh,
the contact with something real that's underneath. So that's the layer. And the same, that's what happened to us. There are layers over us, which is really inside. But the point is, there is a buffer point from the real signal, for the original real signal, with what? With the matrix, the real matrix, not the fake matrix, not the false overlaid matrix. Because matrix means mother, matter. That's the etymology. That's the origin of the word, right? Matrix is mother, matter, and in some languages you can trace it back to the womb itself. Matrix means the womb. In Balkan languages, for example, the same word for the womb is the same word for mother. So the original matrix is the field, is the original, the true field that, it's the real reality. It's not the overlaid false matrix. So when you can contact the real field and you operate from that, you start affecting this. You start, field command.
I never even considered that before. Have you, Devin? What she just said, like because you commented on this place being a copy, and the way that she just worded that about this is an overlay over the original that's blocking us. That makes really good sense. What do you think, Devin?
Yeah, I know. I haven't quite thought of it as an overlay over like that, but yeah, very valuable.
I mean, the overlay, that the overlay, the fact that it's overlaid is it's an illusion caused by the fact that we are constantly receiving certain programming, right? Frequency control onto us. So the way we perceive the world is through a lens. It's like it's a fake kind of reality. I'm not saying that everything is fake. I'm just saying that that there is a level of layer, right, on top of something underneath, and that is the matrix. So if you can take off that matrix, for example, very often back in the day, a witch or a shaman would be called if a certain area, they would say that evil has come upon the land, because they didn't call it matrix, they didn't call it infestation by the matrix, right? They didn't have those words 800 years ago. They would say the land has been infested or infected with evil. And so suddenly the crops wouldn't grow, the children were born with deformities or maybe illnesses, or they would die or wouldn't be born at all, right? So the fertility was affected. Nothing wanted to grow. Maybe the animals were dying. The hunting wasn't successful. So something happened to the land, and a shaman would be called, or a witch would be called, to what? To change the conditions of the field. To literally remove the infestation of the evil. So she would what? She would issue field commands. How? Because she would be connected to the field. The original field, the true one, would tell her, this, do it like that, hum, let it come through her. That's why shamanic, not practices. You see, this is the problem, is that our today's shamanism is anthropologists going to native cultures, observing what I'm talking about, writing notes, and thinking that if a person acts the way the shaman did, they're going to get the same results. No, because the shaman was just enacting commands that he was getting or she was getting from the field. If you don't have the contact with the field, you're just going to perform a theater, and it's going to be ridiculous. And this is most of the new age, right? Not just shamanism, healing as well. If you're not connected to the field, you're not able to affect anything. You're gonna be causing some entanglement in the matrix. So the person might feel something, but you're not actually dealing with the root cause. You don't have power. This is a theater. This is no power. It's just a theater.
Wow. That makes that, I mean, yeah. Because I've seen a few charlatans, and even paid for some of their books until I realized these guys are just, when you're charging.
You always have to see, is there really an effect in my life? Had something really changed in a good way, right? And maybe sometimes the good is not immediately good. Maybe sometimes something needs to collapse, right, in the process, which actually helps. But the point is, if you go and you pay all this money and you get some effect, but then you have to come back and you have to keep coming back.
Yeah, I just kept getting worse.
Right.
No matter whose thing I did, now I'm a little worse. Okay. Even listening to like all that binaural beats and the frequency stuff, I'm like, obviously that's matrix stuff too, because again, I got worse.
All right.
It's supposed to be helping you get better. And it's like, hey, I listened to this for 8 hours while I was sleeping. And so listening to what you're saying, yeah, that makes perfect sense as to why that stuff doesn't work, because it's part of, you're trying to cure your poison with the poison of the place. It's not going to work, right? So yeah, that makes total sense.
I always also say that if something is very, very marketed, if something is very pushed, right, and sort of something is really, really promoted, would it be really that? If it was truly helping, would Matrix really allow these things to be so heavily promoted if they were truly helping people, right?
Right.
So I always say, like, the easiest test, how much coverage, how much promotion, how much marketing is something getting? Because if there is a whole machine, right, throwing money, trying to sell, trying to get you, trying to convince you, trying to get you to buy something, I would stay away from that, because things that get censored are usually the things that work, things that get ridiculed and not promoted, and things that are scarce. Usually, probably that's where you want to look.
Well, I know I had like, I appreciate the answer, because that's very helpful to me, and I'm sure to a lot of other people. And I know I had like, I think there's a handful more questions and I kind of knew we wouldn't get to all of them within the span of time, but I'm hoping maybe you'll consider coming back on.
Absolutely.
And because that would be, I mean, so fantastic. But we don't want to tie up like such a huge chunk because we've already gone probably close now to 2 hours. But I wanted to let everybody know, to head over to your website, which is selfmastery.com,
Selfmasteryquest.com. Yeah.
selfquest.com, and we'll have links to that. And then did you want to highlight again the Lopatin and the Madeira?
Yeah, so two websites. Selfmasteryquest.com is where you can find me with the consultations and the readings that I offer. Also my webinars that I recommend if anybody wants to explore any of this, because as you can see, this is it's not that easy to cover everything within a limited time. So I managed to cover so much more and content that I don't get to cover in interviews. I cover in webinars and courses, so you can find all that on that website. I have one more website, which is mysticalarcticjourneys.com, and that's where I organize the events in the Arctic. And now I'm gonna start with Madeira as well. Not very Arctic, but hey, I didn't know when I was starting the website that this is what's going to happen. I cannot plan everything. Yeah, Madeira being sort of second amazing location that I know myself that it has changed and opened up a lot of things for me just recently. So I would like to offer that as well. I absolutely thank you so much for inviting me to come back. Would be my pleasure. We spoke a little bit about other things that we wanted to cover that we have never gotten to, right? In this one, wanted to talk about the dying and what to do after death and the incarnation trap, etc. So that we didn't get to cover. Absolutely, would be thrilled to come back and explore that a little bit more.
That would be great. I mean, I love topics like this anyway, but and I know Devin does as well. So I think it would be, and we have people that have been looking forward to this. Subscribers on the channel that, I mean, the minute that Devin posted upcoming with your name on it, we had a comment like the next day, like, good job getting Olna on there. So we're very excited. I know a lot of our subscribers are too, and I just can't thank you enough. It's been a real pleasure having you on today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. And yeah, I hope that it was useful for someone, and I would love to come back. So hopefully sometime soon we will be covering even more.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Well, thank you so much. And
don't pedal loose. Don't pedal loose,
exactly.
people. Be decent people. Be kind to one another. Take care of each other.